I'm not see. How are you?
It has been a long time. Yeah, I've been good. Been busy.
Busy?
Yeah, you don't mind if I have a sip on my son's sweet gin?
And you don't mind me doing this too?
Ah, yes, that's very good, very
Chin
good. Just
chin.
to be sitting.
Chin chin.
Cheers, cheers,
Cheers.
cheers.
Jesus. You should come over for a beer.
Oh, I think so. Well, Yasima would like to go to Melbourne too, so I think it'd be good to do that at some stage. Probably
Yeah.
it might be in January.
Oh. So I might still catch up before I leave. That's good.
Yeah, so you're heading overseas, yeah?
I'm going only for a month now. Then I'm going in about, I don't know, maybe 6, 7 months for good. You're still working at the same place, pretty much, like you're going to a Aboriginal site and
Yep, yep. So I'm what they call a FIFO worker. So I fly in and fly out of APY lands
yeah.
every 2 weeks. So I fly up to Cooper Pedy, pick up a vehicle, and then drive into the APY lands. It's about 8 hour drive from the airport.
Yeah.
And then I spend 2 weeks there traveling to all the remote communities where I speak with people that are referred to us for issues of alcohol or drug dependency or issues related to that.
Okay.
It's part of my work with SA Health.
So you're opening the centers for them?
Not so much opening a centre for them, but I'm visiting them at their place of residence. And then we also do camps with them and day diversionary stuff. Yeah. So the plan is for us to be doing healing camps, which means basically taking them out into a remote area and spending 3 days and just having, developing relationships and things like that. But due to COVID, a lot of that has been put on hold because we can't actually, according to COVID, regulations, get together in clumps of people. So we have to be careful how we meet with each other still, because we're still under the same sort of restrictions, even though it's a couple of years down the track.
Yeah, how is COVID in that area? Like, are they more affected or no?
Well, it's swept through the communities, but so far it's only been mild to moderate symptoms for people. Nobody's really had any sort of serious ramifications for it, which has been good. Mainly because it's been, I guess, Omicron that's gone through and not the original COVID that first came out. So the Omicron seemed to be hitting people a bit lighter, and also they've had the opportunity to get some vaccinations. So most of them are pretty good about doing the vaccinations. Yeah. So it's been good like that.
So these programs, do they work like it's kind of similar to this message we are talking about. Understand there is lots of addiction in Aboriginal communities, like with the drugs, we know that, and alcohol and abuse and the drugs and all of that. So you guys are doing your best to help them, and does it kind of, how does it work? How do you find?
Well, pretty much because of the nature of it, we can only ever talk to people that want to talk to us. So it's the same as it is with life in general. So everybody who is referred to us basically have to give consent for us to come and find them. And then we'll engage in a conversation with them. We'll ask them whether or not they want to sort of work with us. And we just take it from there. So they might identify some issues that they're having in their life. And it might be, domestic violence or whatever else comes out of the dependency that they have on whatever it is that they're addicted to. And so we're not so much about stopping them from doing it, but it's more about harm minimization strategies. So I'll be basically helping them to, if you're going to be using, to do it safely. And that seems to be an easier, lower level conversation to have with people, because prohibition has never been something that's ever worked at any time throughout history. And that there's a recognition that people do drink or use drugs, because they want to change the state of consciousness that they're currently in to something that they find a bit more pleasurable. So it's a bit of self-medication to be using alcohol and drugs because they might be experiencing some emotional pain, and because of their history and how they view what's going on for them with regards to, I suppose, the colonial overtaking of Australia. Their perspective of what they see going on in Australia is different from what our perspective may be as being the dominant culture.
So basically, you believe that that has been implanted in them, like the past, and that's the main reason for alcohol and drug abuse. Do you think it's they are bringing maybe the way their parents remind them of what happened in the past? Because I understand now they've been given some land and some kind of like a help to try and change their lives. Is it really deeply implanted in them, what happens?
Oh, well, yes, because it's not historical for them, it's ongoing in present day.
Okay.
The racism that they experience is not a historical thing, it's current and it's ongoing. Like if you go to Alice Springs, it's like Mississippi burning up there. It's like stepping back in time for how Aboriginal people are treated in Alice Springs. They are pulled over by police simply by walking down the street, and people who aren't drinking alcohol and asked to show their ID. It's not something that would happen in normal Australian culture or life. Just recently, Aboriginal people have been up in the APY lands have no longer need to work for the unemployment benefits that they receive. So they've got to do a certain number of hours per fortnight of work in order to receive the dole money. That's not something that happens in the rest of Australia. It's only happening for Aboriginal people. They've got to do a certain number of hours per week of community service, and that community service might mean cleaning up cemeteries or painting rocks, fairly sort of low, mundane type activities that they've got to do in order to be receiving their unemployment benefits. But that's not happening to other Australian people. That's going on. So there is from their perspective, there's an ongoing setting aside of Aboriginal people to be treated differently than what would be the case elsewhere. So it's not historical for them. And they are living in a remote environment. Like I've posted some photos up on my Instagram page where you'll see a photo of the church up there. It's a few benches and a shed, and someone's done a painting of Jesus on the wall. It's a very sort of poor looking thing. The photo of the local police station, it's a shed with police written on the outside of it. So everything's like in a developing country sort of state of state of repair. And then there's overcrowding in the houses up there. There's the amenities poor. So basically there's a lot of suffering that they would undergo that people who are living in normal sort of suburbia within the rest of Australia wouldn't be experiencing. So in order for them to, I suppose, put up with what they're experiencing, there's some self-medication that goes on with the use of alcohol, drugs, or anything else that they may do. Yeah. Plus, there's the loss of sense of belonging, sense of place for them, sense of culture for them, because they no longer feel that they have that. We talk about giving them back land, but it was as though it was ours to give back to them, sort of thing. So from their perspective, what are you doing? You're not really giving us anything. From their perspective.
Okay. now going back to everyday life, and
Yeah.
from your perspective, an instance, how do you view life yourself? Is it like, do you think we should take life too seriously, or maybe more like a child, like a playground? How do you view life from that perspective, so to speak?
Well, I kind of enjoy life. You know, I every day I'm struck by the beauty of what I see around me. I'll be looking at sunrises and sunsets and cloud formations and all that sort of stuff. So I pretty much walk around in a bit of awe most of the time, and also hold things very lightly. Like I'm fairly open. Like I work in a an office environment when I'm back in Adelaide, and I'm fairly open about with my work colleagues on how I live my life and how I might be sort of responding to what I see going on around me. And I've noticed that over time it's kind of infiltrated the workplace, where I notice other people are starting to sort of respond in like manner because they can't really deny the reality of what I'm talking about, where I might be talking about things as casual as, well, I'll see you tomorrow, all going according to plan. You know, something like that, because honestly, I don't know what tomorrow's going to hold. I don't know whether I'm going to be at the workplace tomorrow. So from the conversations I've had with some of my work colleagues, they know I hold any future plans very lightly, and with a recognition that they are plans that I'm making. They don't actually have any reality other than me imagining this is something that I'm going to be doing. I'm making a plan. So I'll hold the plan lightly. Or the past, I'll say, well, the past is it's gone. You know, it no longer exists. It only exists as a thought process. So I've had quite a few conversations with work colleagues about that, and sometimes quite in a humorous manner. We might talk about things like age, death, all that sort of stuff, because sometimes I'll clown around with them and they'll say, how old are you? And I'll say, well, I'm ageless. And, well, how do you come to that conclusion? I says, well, how do you measure age? And then that gets into a big conversation, because they already know that age is a number, it's a concept, it's something that's put upon something. But I'll, you know, with them sort of working in it, have those conversations about, well, how do you measure age? Is the thing you're using to measure your age something that you actually are? And if it is not what you actually are, then how can you use that as a ruler for yourself? A measuring stick, you know, like the body. You're looking at the body as being something that's you identify as being, and that then becomes a number that you put on yourself. But when you look into it, it's not actually what you are. It's not something you can say, oh yeah, I'm this old, when it's not actually what you are. So how can you? So I've had open conversations with work colleagues, and you know, they've felt the impact of it. Like some of them have, you know, felt a little bit of fear when I talk about hope and things like that. Because one of the other works with one work colleague will deliberately kick up a conversation and bring the word hope into it. Well, come on, Craig, tell us what you think hope is. And I'll say, well, hope is disguised misery. Why is that? And I says, well, you're basically, in hoping for something, you're denying contentment with what you've already got. You want something to be different than it is. You know, so obviously you're not happy with what is right now. Otherwise, you wouldn't be hoping for something else to be happening. Right? So hope is a projection. So I have those type of conversations with the work colleagues. So from my perspective, life is, you know, it's just pretty easy going. Like I don't strive for anything else. I don't want anything to be anywhere else. I don't really have any regrets. Anything like that. I've sort of, what I do find, which is interesting, is the more you, and this is all just using words, but the more you basically forget about everything and give up any sort of trying to sort of hold on to anything, the more obvious it becomes and the more opportunity there is to basically just express yourself as what you are. There's no attempting to be anything, because there's nothing there to actually be anything other than what you are. It's already happening. You're already doing it.
Yeah.
Not that there's anybody doing anything, but it's all there.
So do you think it's it's the way to live the life? It's kind of easier way. I understand we don't have it easy at all times, because in this duality it has to kind of go both ways, I presume, and good and bad, pleasant, painful, whatever concept we give it. Just like in a nature, a bit of rain, a bit of sunshine, wind or blowing, but it doesn't conceptual. Wind apparently doesn't conceptualize. Or so do you think, like, people, as you said, people get scared from when they hear where there's no hope, and that you don't plan? How can you not plan, And I presume, like, planning apps, I've struggled planning myself. Like, I'm supposed to book people used to help me book at the office my travels, because I just couldn't do it. And now that I'm, on my own at home, and I just had to do it myself. But I struggle now booking like places to stay, and I'm absolutely hopeless. But then I tell myself, like, but there's no striving. People go to me, oh, so not everything is going according to the plan. Like, how do you mean, like, according to what's the plan, and the plan is this. Actually, this wine is called The Plan, the brand. So everything is going.
And the plan is to finish that glass.
That's the wine, the peanut called The Plan.
Yeah.
That's the only plan I have.
Yeah, that's good.
But and I'm like, well, something is gonna come up, I presume. If it doesn't, I'll sleep under a bridge. Apparently, it's warm over there.
Yeah.
So.
I think something you said there was like, do you think that's the way to live life? There isn't actually a way to live life. There isn't any way that you can live life. Like, life just lives, and that's what you are. And to think that there's a way to live is operating on the assumption that there's actually something that gets to live a life, or gets to choose the better way in order to live the more peaceful way to live. But there isn't any way. There's no way where we could be living a better life or anything like that. It's what happens is what happens. And that for a time, I can recall, I can look back on the history of my own journey, because from a Indian perspective or a Hindu perspective, they talk about existence of you being like a long, many segmented snake that's curling its way through this thing called time, and that each segment represents a section of your life. And if you look back to like 20 years ago as to how you would have been at that time, you can have a memory can come up that you can look at, where you can think about the turbulence that was present at that time, and the thought processes that might have been happening, the narrow field of vision that might have been occurring, the reactions and the belief structures that might have been happening for that particular time. But that no longer exists. It's gone. And somehow that has disappeared, and now this is here. And what this is totally different to that. It's a different horse altogether. And if the two ever met each other, there'd be no point of communication or conversation. Neither one would understand the other or have any relation to the other, because they're not the same. But it's our memory and attribution of identity that makes us think it's the same thing, that somehow we've grown from this to this. But it's not like it's it's like the expression, you can't put your foot in the same river twice. What's called a river is a motion of water going past, and you think you can put your foot in it, take it out and put it back in. It's the same place. It's not. It's totally different. It's not. It's something that's moved on. So there is no way to actually live. I don't know how I am where I am now. Where I am now was what I'm seeing now was certainly nothing I ever imagined as being anything I could possibly look for. I mean, how do you look for this when you don't even know what it is you're looking for? And I don't know how it came to be that I now recognize what I recognize. I don't know how that happened. I
So
really
you
got
don't
no
know how it
idea.
happens.
Yeah, I got no idea how it happened, because it wasn't something.
Yeah.
It wasn't something. If I knew how it happened, it meant I would have done it.
Mm.
But I didn't. I didn't do it. So it's hard for me to sort of communicate to people about it. All I can do is talk about what the perspective is here, and that perspective other people will hear and agree with, and I'll say things to them like, the reason why you're agreeing with this is because you know it's true. How do you know it's true? Because you already recognize it as something that you already understand. It's something that's like, we're not telling people something they don't already know when you communicate to them about the past or the future not actually being real. People know that. They do know it, but they identify strongly with the notion of having control. And somehow that kind of dropped off. I don't know how it happens. Sometimes I think it's a natural process. I think about I have thoughts arise in my head, which come about like my 2 weeks away up in the APY lands, my 2 week separation from Yesima and my family, and what that all about is this, because I'm away from my family 6 months of the year. So I'm thinking, is this some sort of loving way of preparing the family for my final separation, that they get used to me not being around, so they get used to my absence? Do you know what I mean?
Mm.
And I kind of look at that and I think, is that something that's kind of happening there? Is this like a loving way of easing people into my eventual non-existence?
Interesting.
Yeah, I have no idea, but it's a thought that has arisen in my head.
Yeah.
And my experience of my sort of journey, to use the word, is that it's one that's very loving and very caring, and does what it can to sort of communicate to what I am and those around me in a way that's more peaceful and accepting to people. So I look at that and I think, oh, that's interesting. I would have never had that thought. How do I get that thought? Where does that thought come from?
Yeah.
But it's a thought that's there. So you ponder upon it, you look upon it and say, oh yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah.
You got no idea.
Yeah, I get you, because I get similar insights. But even if event was apparently bad event, like say if I broke my arm, when I broke my arm, a year ago or whatever, and I thought maybe life tried to save me from myself instead of prepare me for something else. That's kind of, I see it now as almost preparation for some next event or whatever it has in store for me, this beingness. I don't know. I do nothing about it, but the thoughts arise, and because I know there was an idea to change the way I lived, I just wanted to get out of the rat race, but I did not, as a person, did not know how to do it. But slowly life did it. I had nothing, like I didn't do it. So it really happened. First, second, third time, I actually managed to stop, just to interrupt that cycle of rat race.
Mm.
Yeah, so basically, I like what you're saying. It's like as if life has got, it just takes care of you. It's like a message, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah, and that's also in stating that, I'm recognizing that that's a narrative that I'm attributing to something. All right, that's a narrative that's appearing for something, and you know what I find most kind of loving about this is that the person doesn't actually exist, like it's a cartoon character pretty much, and yet there's love and concern that a narrative arises that causes that cartoon character to feel at peace. You know, like, why would you even bother doing that if you know, it's just the way it is. It could just be completely callous and not give a shit, but it's not. It doesn't seem to be the case, or it hasn't been. It hasn't been my experience of living my life. Is that I'm finding nature communicates to me very much about how self-loving nature is. You know, the fact that we don't jump from winter straight to summer. We ease out of winter through spring into summer, and then into autumn, into winter. Like there's this gradual sort of change that goes from one season into the next. Like it's a loving sort of thing that occurs for the plants and the animals and all that sort of stuff to adjust themselves to the changes as they occur. And I find that that's kind of how it is with the unfolding, if you like, or the rising of the sun. That it's not dark and then the sun's immediately in the high sky and everybody's blinding like this. There's a gradual arising where the shadows slowly get dispersed in your experience of life. And I find that for myself is that there's a gradual dispersion ongoing, like it's never ending, of just this inner sort of stuff. Yeah.
And that's what we are, it seems like the nature, just like that.
Well, we are nature.
We are nature, yeah.
Yeah, we are nature.
Yeah.
That's exactly what we are. We're not separate from nature.
I like what you're saying. It's kind of in the nature. You just described how like autumn is there, and then there's winter, you know, spring and summer, but they don't fight. There's no fight. It's just so seemingly subtle, you know, give way to each other. There is no narrative about it in the nature.
Yeah, and it'll be changing. And in the middle, there'll be in between stage where it'll be hot one day, then raining the next, or it might start off cold and then warm up in the afternoon, and then a little bit of sprinkling of rain in the afternoon. Just sort of, or there'll be dew on the grass in the morning to sort of cool them down as the sun gradually rises during the day. So it's just this massive expression of self-love, self-care. That's what narrative is going on in my head when I look and see things, and that's what I communicate, and that's what I talk about sometimes with people, but with the full recognition that that's a meaning that I'm attributing to what I see going on. It's a meaningless world, but that's a meaning that is there in the same sense at the same time. For me to sort of see the beauty in it, and out of that comes a capacity to trust, a capacity to be confident and not fearful, knowing that everything is as it is, and it's all going to be okay regardless of whatever happens, even you know, pain that might arise. There's the recognition that the pain is a temporary thing. You know, it does pass, or if it doesn't, then even that not passing of the pain itself is temporary as well, because obviously, you know, this body will pass eventually, and the body does have the capacity to release chemicals which are natural, which can help deal with the pain. And if not, we can fortunately get some sort of pain relief from medications which people have found from plants and chemicals and things that they've made to sort of deal with stuff, so yeah. But I find that I continue to live a very ordinary life. Like I go to work every day, I come home, I watch Netflix, I have relations with my mother, my family, my friends. I can engage in conversations at any particular place where people want to talk. Occasionally, something might arise in me to say something which I know might be controversial, but it's part of basically just a conversation that occurs, but it's not actually, I can't control what's coming out of my mouth. Sometimes I'll say something, I think, oh man, I probably shouldn't have said that. Well, really, how do I know I shouldn't have said that? Because it's something that someone else has heard. Now they've got to respond to it. Yeah.
It makes me laugh, that makes me laugh each time. Sometimes you just surprise yourself as everyone else as what comes out of your mouth.
Oh, absolutely.
What I do it for.
Absolutely. Completely unfiltered. And sometimes I'm aware, a filter will be applied, but sometimes it won't be applied. It just depends on the circumstance. I had this scenario where I work currently owe me a bit of money in back pay, like about $8,000 or something like that. And from the particular conditioning that I was in at the time, I wasn't going to worry about it, right? So I said, well, why aren't you going to worry? I says, well, I don't really want to sully myself fighting for money, right? And then I went to, it's quite an interesting story. I went to Hungry Jack's and I ordered a breakfast pancake breakfast, and they gave me this breakfast. On the picture, it looks great, like pancakes with syrup and butter melting over the top of it. I thought, wow, that looks really good. I'll get that. So what they served me up was this dry pancakes in a styrofoam box with a satchel of syrup to pour over the top of the pancake, but there was no butter. So I looked at this, there's no butter. So I went downstairs to talk to the girl behind the counter. I says, oh, you've forgotten to give me the butter for the pancakes. And she says, oh, we don't have butter. I says, well, why would you sell me the pancakes with butter and maple syrup if you haven't got any butter? If I knew you had no butter, I wouldn't have ordered the pancakes. She says, oh, well, that's just what it is. I says, well, you've actually sold me something here that's false advertising. It's got up there the picture of butter and maple syrup, and I've got dry pancakes with a satchel of syrup and no butter to put on it. So it became this thing of, all of a sudden, this thing just went in my mind that I couldn't sit silent about this. I had to say something, because it was like this multi-million-dollar company basically just robbing me of the butter and the pancake, right? So from that, it flowed over into my workplace scenario where I said, they're doing the same thing at work. They're not giving me my back pay. They're not giving me my butter on the pancakes, right? Yes. So my whole perspective shifted to it being one of it's more beneficial to them for me to say something than to not say something, because it's not appropriate for them to be doing what they're doing with regards to something. It's not appropriate for Hungry Jack's or McDonald's to be advertising goods and then not giving it to the people who are paying for it, So basically I just said, so that little experience at Hungry Jack's just basically helped flip the switch to enable me to move past some, I guess, cognitive blockage that I had in place, which prevented me from basically challenging the organization that I work with to give me the money that they owe me. And that I didn't fall on my sword and say, oh, don't worry about it. I don't want to dirty my hands fighting for the money, without realizing that was my own sort of cognitive narrative that was going on in my head, preventing me from saying something when there's nothing wrong with saying something. about it. Do you know what I mean?
And actually, Craig, similar happened here. I would just go, often I wouldn't ask for stuff because sometimes this feels humble in a way. I don't know. And I go sometimes, am I capable to live like this? And just the mind starts its narrative. And then I go, in India, they had gurus. All these gurus were looked after because people used to bring them food and they've got somewhere to live. And with us, it's different. We have to go to work, earn money, and put up with people now. It's seemingly easier, but also harder in a way, having to put up with egotistic people, because I think there is certain don't you think there is certain transparency? It's almost, you see through in a way that, I'm not saying you or I'm not claiming it as a person. That's something, whatever it is, prior to us, that natural intelligence or nature through us sees that manipulation at work by the bosses, by people who work with you. I actually posted something the other day because I had this experience noticing that people would smile at you. First, they snap at you and put you down, say something nasty to you for whatever reason. And after that, they would be calling you honey and sweetheart. To me, somehow it's sneaky. I know it's coming from person. It's very obvious. It's coming from person, and that's the excuse to do it next time, because every time they're gonna do that, snap at you, say something to belittle you, and then they're gonna call you sweetheart. So so you put up with their crap. What do you think about that? Do you think?
Well, it's something that happens. It's something that happens.
Yeah.
And I think from my experience, the reason it happens is because people have their own experience in life and how they think they need to get through this life journey is by putting other people down. That's looking at it on one level, but on the other level, there's nobody there actually doing anything. It's just an expression of negative energy, what we call negative energy, coming towards us, saying something, which is kind of engendering something in us.
Yeah.
But then, I go through several sort of layers of thinking about that sort of stuff, where I'll be thinking, well, they're actually doing me a favor. It's like there's this massive self-love going on again, where I'm performing surgery on myself, getting stuff exposed in me that's reacting to this. Like, what is it that's reacting to somebody saying bad words to me? What is it that feels the need to defend something? So I need to look at that. Why am I responding to that?
I like that. You just said it. Why am I responding to that? Because the nature responds and person reacts, I'd say.
Yeah, exactly. We do. There is an interplay. And the response can come from, it can be a natural response that isn't carrying any baggage with it of feeling attacked. So I'm responding, but it can be at the same time an exposure within ourselves of an area that is able to be touched by something else because of some deficiency we think we have that needs to be protected from this. I need to be recognized. This is not how I am, and all that sort of business. So, I think we respond how we respond, regardless of it. Like I at one day I was just going to turn the other cheek, so to speak, to being ripped off thousands of dollars because I didn't want to sort of sully myself getting into the big battle over something like this. And then the next day, simply because of butter on pancake, the whole perspective shifted, and I thought, hang on a second, I'm not actually doing anybody any favors here to not say something. So it wasn't all of a sudden one part it was about me, but then the next part, me responding, isn't about me responding.
Yeah.
It's just it's an unconditioned, unattached response that's going on. It's not me sort of fighting for something. It's me just witnessing a response occurring out of that. So it's more, I suppose, it's a bit more sort of surgical than nature. As you say, nature does respond. Absolutely, it responds. But sometimes we can get on the horse of nature responding, and that response can be used to strengthen the person, if you like. Like I'm responding to this, when really nature responds anyway. You've got no ownership that you can claim regarding the response. Do you know what I mean?
Yes.
There's nothing there that's saying I'm now a stronger person because I'm responding.
Yeah. It's as it is,
Yeah.
as it comes up and pops up in a moment, I presume. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, it does. It was just something that changed. It's similar to, several years ago when I did this thing where I had this strong desire to basically sit out the front of Parliament House in Adelaide, in South Australia, in protest against the refugees who were being locked up in the Baxter Detention Centre, and they were stitching their lips together at the time, right? And there were children there. So I'd just returned from India when this was going on, and I had this strong, like, energetic sense in me that almost couldn't be resisted, that I had to do something about it. So I basically kicked off a fast of solidarity out the front of Parliament House in Adelaide, and I sat there for a week with this other French fellow who joined me. And then all these other organizations began to surround us, like Amnesty International and the Socialists and the Democrats, and all these other movements came along. And then it became a bit of a national sort of thing. And radio came down, the newspapers came down, and I did that, but I couldn't not do it. So it wasn't me actually doing it, but at that time, it was just something that arose within me to go and do this thing. So I did it. And it had a good outcome as far as raising publicity and awareness of what was going on at the time. But it wasn't coming from a place of me getting on a horse and riding along and doing something, or it being part of my identity that this is what I do. It was just something that occurred at that time and hasn't occurred again since. There's been other apart from the pancakes on top of the butter on top of the pancakes, but you kind of, sometimes the wind will blow, and the wind blows when the wind blows. Who knows what the wind's going to do, or sometimes there'll be a cyclone, or sometimes there'll be a different emotional response going on, and that you've got no control over that because there's nobody there actually doing it. It's not. Anger will arise, or whatever will come up. It's just an interplay.
Yeah.
And sometimes.
It's not necessarily a bad thing. Sometimes we think there's our belief, that to think that something is bad event. I actually came across one of the Stoics. Sometimes I love following Stoicism, and one of them was actually, he was really into that negative happening in your life, but he believed that it was opening the doors for the new, like the way the pancakes happen, just the nature doing that. For instance, because that money you earned with your hard work, and that's yours, So you could have let someone steal it from you or whatever, but nature knew better. Okay, I'll give him this example, pancake example, so he might learn the lesson from that. I like that in a way.
Well, that's right. It's something like we don't know what we're in until we're unlocked from it, and that you don't actually know what cognitive blinkers or blinders you might have on until it drops off, and then you say, okay, well, all right, well, I can act differently now because now I can see things differently. But that's only for that time period, for that particular thing. It's not something that can then be a pattern, because other times it might be okay to let them take shit away. Do you know what I mean? So there's no one way over another way that's better than the other. There's no
Yeah.
You know, it's not bad and it's not good either. It's just
Yeah.
it just is what it is. And
Yeah.
you know, I don't know what's happening behind the scenes with regards to me saying something, because it might ripple. The ripples go far-reaching as to you know, people responding to what's going on. With regards to someone actually saying, "Well, no, actually, I disagree. I think I am entitled to that."
Mm.
And you know, I don't agree. I said, as previously, I was prepared just to sit with it, with the flippant response that was given to me by a water cooler, but now I'm no longer prepared to do that.
Yeah.
And there it is. And I just went along with that.
Mm.
But it doesn't mean anything. It doesn't take away from anything to say something. Like we have this, we can create this narrative in our head about what we think someone who can talk about these topics, how they should behave and how they should be detached or non-responsive to things or not having emotions and all that sort of stuff, when it's got nothing to do with any of that.
Mm.
Absolutely nothing to do with any of it. Though. It's we are completely ordinary people who for some reason or other have a different perspective from some other people that causes us to maybe have different thought processes occasionally than other people, and might have a more peaceful existence as a result of it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, when people say, I seem, regardless what you're saying, it seems to me that I'm coming from that personal perspective and you are not. I just tend to say that seeming difference to me is just that now, from the difference now from 10 years ago here, is the thought arises here, like feeling arises, emotion, tears, crying, laughter. It arises without me participating in that as a separate entity. That's the only thing I can see. I don't know. Yeah. It all just arises by itself, just like in the nature, as you said before.
Yeah. But even the idea of the person being there's nothing wrong with that either.
Yeah.
You know, like it's not something you created.
Yeah.
Because you know, it's you know, I ponder about that sort of stuff sometimes. If these things are so bad and so needed to get rid of, then what the hell are they doing there? You know, like thoughts exist. These things we call thoughts, they do exist. And they randomly come along and they have these narratives that they say, this thing that we call a person or a me, yeah, it does exist. It's there. It can't be denied. It is something that goes on, and yeah, it's okay. It doesn't need to be gotten rid of. It can be seen that it's not actual. Like it's not actual as in you can't actually locate the bloody thing anywhere. If you go digging for it, you won't find it.
Yeah.
It doesn't actually exist other than a structural, conceptual structure. That's about all it is. But it's a tool that gets used to have a set of experiences while we're in this domain of reality, if you like, and communicate to each other about what's going on. So there's no struggles to get rid of anything, because the struggling to get rid of something is to basically put more reality into it than what is actually there. Yeah.
You know, where I see a bit of a sort of problem is when people really, when it's kind of a bit chronic, when it becomes like a disease, like a mental illness in a way. Speaking of some people that I know, it's kind of problem for them. It's not just you know, subtle thought and coming and going. But it seems that they invest so much in their thinking process that they start believing something that isn't there. So from one little thing to another, you know, I know this because it was the same case here. You know, you someone like me had to go nuts almost, you know, make it or break it to look into this stuff. So a bit of a madness here, you know, and it was just more like a belief. Okay, from one to another, this might happen to you, might become sick and you might lose your job. It was constantly repetitive, and I couldn't do anything about it. It was just getting worse till I got sick, like psychologically and physically, literally physically from that. And then the more I was blaming myself into, you know, talking myself into being really sick, I was getting more sick physically. And you know, and I, you know, increased my insurance and everything, like for the family, you know, after me, so they had something to live on. And you see, and there's that feeling of stuckness, you know, stuckness of that congested energy, so-called personal individual, in this locked into this body. And yeah, basically, why I mentioned someone kind of didn't like me using words simplicity. Actually, word simplicity for someone ignorant like myself a few years ago, like it was kind of eye opener when they said, "Oh, it's available to you, like right in this very instance, if you know want to have a look, like that. You know, there is nothing that you're lacking, and it's very simple." You know, you are alive, you are like, you know, there's a sense of presence, sense of aliveness in this body that does not age, as you mentioned to your people from work. There's something there that wasn't aging. To me, that's that sense of aliveness that was there since I was a kid. That sense of aliveness has not aged a second. And when they said to me, it's so simple, I thought, oh God, yes, why not? It's simple. It's simple and clear, and it's available right here and right now, so to speak, timeless. And there's simple.
So that worked for you?
Yeah.
Did that work for you then?
Yeah.
Okay. Cool. Yeah, it's hard to know what's gonna unlock.
I don't know. I you know, to be honest, just like you, I don't know what unlocked it, but that kind of that was kind of relief for me, is that burden falling on my back, hearing, you know, that I was already on the top, you know, all like not as a separate entity, but you know, I did not need to climb any steps or stairs to get somewhere. You know, that it was already available here, not with someone else. Just, it was like, go out and live your life. Like, it's not here in the satsangs. It's everywhere. Satsang is where you are. Wherever you are, satsang is. It's not in separate place somewhere where someone is telling you how to live, what to do, like by prescription, because that aliveness is with you, not with someone else.
Yeah.
That's how
you never see a tree. You never see a tree go on the satsang, do you?
Yeah. I don't know.
Yeah, well, I've never seen one. Yeah, so, but the nature of life, from what I see, is it just is something that's happening, and it doesn't attend anywhere. It doesn't. It doesn't proselytize. It doesn't evangelize. It's not out to change anything. It just is what it is, and I suppose the recognition that occurs is life just recognizing itself through, you know, through these apparent sort of appearances of individuals and bodies and things, and you know, and there is a truth in that. You've got to take a step apart from yourself, a step apart to recognize beauty, you know, to recognize awe, because you you don't actually see it if you're not looking. It's something. Beauty doesn't recognize beauty. Awe doesn't recognize awe. Life. There needs to be a degree of separation in order to recognize something.
Mm.
If you are that something, you don't actually see it because it's unknowable. So you've got to take a mental step back to look and see a beautiful sunset or a sunrise, or to see a beautiful cloud formation. But those things don't actually know that of themselves. It's yeah.
As if you need to get out of space to see that you were in a space already, in a way.
Yeah, that's right.
It's like fish in the
water. Yeah, exactly. So we float back and forwards between that.
Yeah.
And that's there's nothing wrong. That's good. That's a good thing to do. But quite often you just exist without an awareness of how much in the flow you are. Like, there's in the lands, I experience a lot of synchronicities, a lot of serendipity, a lot of flow going on. And every now and again, you're aware of that happening because you get these little cognitive things going on, a little narrative telling you that it's happening, but it's happening all the time. It is what you are. You are the flow of life.
Yeah.
And the reason you can recognize a flow of life is because you take a step back from it to look and see that there's a flow happening. If you're not taking that step back, you wouldn't be seeing it because you are it. So that's part of the reason why to attribute reasons to things as to why the person exists is a way of having some self-appreciation, a way of having some self-recognition, some self-love, is to have an entity that you can create a perspective from and have a look at through. Because without that, you're blind. You wouldn't know anything. You don't see anything.
Yeah.
And that's okay.
I think often the problem with humans is just they believe they run the show, that they have to be in control of everything, of their breathing, of their blood flowing and everything. Like, try to control if you need to go to the toilet, try to control that. And can you control like hair growing or nails growing? It just happens by itself, so not in controlling anything. While we're sitting here, we don't know how long we're gonna last. It's gonna be 5 years from now, 5 minutes, 5 seconds, or 30 years. Like, I know nothing. And I'm claiming nothing. No, that's now I can say that. But a few years ago, I thought I was in control of my car. I just wanted to drive everyone everywhere because I thought I was the one in control. No one could be in control as much as I could,
Yeah.
So, anyway.
Well, it's how we make ourselves feel comfortable, isn't it? Sort of create our little nest that we live in, a little sense of security.
Yeah.
When I got lost in the outback, because did I tell you about that? I kind of got lost in the outback for a little while. Yeah, well, I got lost in the outback for a little while. I went about 180 kilometers off track.
Okay.
And how it happened, I was driving off lands at the time, and I came across there was some roadworks happening. So there was a sign that said detour. So I said, and I was pointing to this other road. So I thought, I'll just go on that road. Maybe it's going to take me with the back way out past the communities, and I'll end up back on a Stuart Highway somewhere down the track. All roads got to go somewhere, right? So I'm driving down the roads, and I'm used to driving up there for hundreds of kilometers without seeing a sign, nothing. So I'm driving down this road, and it's taking a few weaves and turns, and the road's getting less and less and less and dissipating and disappearing. And then I'm on the bloody goat track driving through some tree branches and things. And I've done all sorts of turning around, and I'm following the tracks, and then the track just virtually disappears. And I'm sitting there and looking at myself, and I'm saying, seriously, did that just happen? Am I now lost? this is insane. I says, I'll turn around and I'll follow my tracks back out. I've got fairly beefy tires on the car. I'll follow the tracks back out. So I'm driving along, following the dirt tracks, following the tire treads in dirt. And then the strong wind comes and blows all the bloody tracks away. So I'm completely lost in the bush. And I'm thinking, yeah, I better go find something. So I found this clump of rocks. I drove up and parked next to this clump of rocks. And I figured, well, they're fairly permanent looking. So I parked next to this clump of rocks, and it's a really weird sensation to have every sense of familiarity gone, while at the same time being totally aware that you're there in this complete voidness of experience of not knowing where the hell you are at all. So if they're on the completely lost, fortunately in the car we were prepared for this. We have ration packs of water and sat phones and EPIRBs. So I got on the satellite phone and I rang up the police, which was about 300 kilometers away. And I says, hey guys, I'm kind of stranded. And he says, well, can you see any pink mountains? And I says, no, because they'll talk about the pink mountains of Mimili. And I says, no, I can't see any pink. And he says, what do you see? And I said, well, I see some mountains over there on the horizon, but they're kind of triangular in shape and they're grey. They're not pink. If I'd drive towards them if they were pink. And he goes, oh, okay. So they didn't know where else. So can you give us your GPS coordinates? So I gave them my GPS coordinates, right? And then they said, okay, we're going to send someone out to get you. So 6 hours later, the police finally turn up. And they had the base station. They had my GPS coordinates on a map. They had the other police car with its GPS coordinates getting pinged. And then back at the base station, they were drawing these two pinging GPS things together, and then they were able to locate me and then drive me back, show me the way out of this location. But it was a very interesting experience because I kind of viewed it similar to like a professional fisherman falling off a boat.
Yeah.
And you're out there in the ocean fishing away and you fall off the boat. It happens. And it's just how you sort of keep the presence of mind to respond in a scenario. And I like that because when the police came out, because a lot of people do die in these, because it's a stinking hot day and people do die and they go wandering off, they panic because in that scenario, the mind does want to panic. It wants to totally freak out. So when the police came out, they said to me, weren't you freaking out with that? And I says, well, I knew you guys were on the way. And I sure as hell wasn't going to be going anywhere. I've seen enough movies to know what happens about people that leave their cars. They wander off and they die somewhere and they find their skeletons.
Yeah.
So, I've got plenty of water in the car. I've got a satellite phone. I've got some food to last me 4 days.
Yeah.
So, I wasn't going to be going anywhere. I had communication with you, and they were getting back in touch with me every 30 minutes or so, just to sort of let me know they were still on their way. But it was a very interesting scenario because I pondered, why the hell did that happen? And there's lots of things I got out of it. Was I was able to sort of test our system and see if it would work in the worst case scenario, which it did.
Yeah.
And I was able to sort of experience what it was like, of how much we do actually create around ourselves a nest of security that helps us think that we're secure and we're safe in this environment that we have, but it's all purely mental constructs, all of it.
It's actually
On this particular day, it all collapsed. Sorry?
Yeah, you're right. Life is like that. There's no security.
No,
such a thing as security. So yeah.
So on this particular day, all of that completely collapsed for me. Absolutely and totally collapsed. And it was just, it's just a really contrast of being fully aware of where you are at the same time not knowing where the hell you are. Wow. It was just like having this living experience of sitting there in emptiness. It was just weird.
Wow.
But it gave me a real respect for safety systems, respect the land up there, the reason for Aboriginal culture, because their culture is what helps them survive. I've had Aboriginal elders take me on tours around the place, and they'll point out certain rock formations to me, and they'll tell me a song about the rocks, and then they'll start singing to me about the rock. They'll sing to me the song. They'll sit in the car and literally sing at me about this little story. And I just looked at it and thought, well, that's really comforting. They've created meaning out of all these little landmarks around the place, and they sing their songs about each given landmark because that's how they navigate their way through this completely unfamiliar terrain. It's similar to what we do with the stars. You know, we name the stars and all that sort of stuff and planets that we navigate. We create a map of meaning in how we go through things. So yeah.
Wow.
So, but you can't go to the outback without getting lost.
Yeah.
To really experience it.
You had a true experience. That's a true experience.
Oh hell yeah! It was a true experience.
Wow.
I live to tell the tale.
You live to tell. Wow, 6 hours you had to wait for them.
Yeah.
And maybe we should just come to the end of this, and I just
Sure.
wanted to ask you, out of curiosity, just sometimes it comes to me with this current non-duality environment, there just seems to be too many people who talk about non-duality. They come out like mushrooms after rain, and they're just everywhere. And sometimes it comes to me, I view it as form of narcissism, because they come out of certain teacher, they keep repeating, because I get to see comments on my YouTube channel. Sometimes they're commenting on certain on these new teachers. It seems to me in this world, it's not only in a world out there, but also in this non-duality community, that most people talk, but not many listen. And because what actually brought me to this, to mention this, I listened this, someone sent me a great Stoics post, like by one of the Stoics who said that sometimes people just ask you to be there for them and to listen to them. That's all, not to help them, just to listen to them. So I tend to see often this non-duality community, people that love setting themselves up as teachers, as ego trip. Yeah, so I don't know how you view that.
I think the non-duality movement should run away from it as fast as you can. Pretty much, you know, I almost view it like a cult in some ways. You know, I can't stress enough how much non-duality you might sort of get something out of it to start with, much like you would with any book of spirituality or something like that. But it's only just a pointer, and the more you walk away from it, the freer you'll be. You know, it's like you might, if you're sitting in a church, you might get something good about sitting in the church and experience all the nice ritualistic stuff and all the nice buzzwords and the conversations, but the sun shines more brightly outside of the church. And with non-duality, it's the same. The sun is actually much brighter when you get away from all the buzzwords and all the ways that you're supposed to be talking and all that sort of stuff, and all the language that they use about what's good and what's bad. And there is no non-duality. It doesn't even exist. Non-duality is itself just a concept that gets presented as being something that can be attained. And once you can speak about non-duality, then you've arrived somewhere. That's just another con. There's no non-duality. There's no duality. These things are just concepts, yes, which imprison people into this world of so-called knowledge that they've got something that other people don't have. You know, so for my suggestion would be to forget about it all, just totally forget about it, just walk away if possible. But there's that hunger, gotta be this, I've got to be complete. That's burning away, and non-duality, so-called, seems to be presenting that.
Yeah.
But you know, the tree doesn't give a shit about non-duality. The sun doesn't. You know, the sun shines brighter outside of these temples that we make, because that's what it is. It's a temple, and people are addicted to, you know, feeling a sense of surety that they've attained something, they've found something, they've won something. It's not necessary at all. At all.
Yeah. I see it also as a kind of form of addiction. Okay, I have to have my teacher, I have to go revisit my teacher, like, and be a part of community. I can't live without it. It's in a way, it's almost like a grasping, as if you were a neglected child and looking for that parent that was never there for you, trying to hold onto something or cling onto something, you know.
Who tells them that they need something? Where does that information come from? Man, if you're growing up, it's almost like regressive childhood. If you're growing up from a child to an adult, then you become an adult. You don't, you're not dependent upon someone leading you and guiding you in every step of the way. You form your own conclusions, you make your own decisions about where you're going to go from whatever you're going to be doing. And if you make a mistake, then you learn from the mistake. I mean, seriously, it doesn't really matter, any of this stuff, you know, and non-duality, you know, all this mystical thinking and stuff. It's strange. But it is seductive, though. It's very seductive, because you do get exposed to a different perspective. You know, non-duality is another perspective that most people don't really know about. So it just becomes something else that now I can get out of duality. Now if I live in non-duality, then I'll be free. But it's just the same thing. It's another perspective with its buzzwords, because they can't. Now they're on non-duality, they're too afraid to put that down. They can't let go of non-duality for fear that they're going to let go of something or lose something. Going to lose their freedom that they've finally found. There's no freedom to find, because you've never been other than.
It's as if you know, it's kind of like an escape route, like in a way they, you know, trying to escape life. I'm going to escape life and get into this thing called non-duality or cult. That's also, I call it also a cult, like you. It's similar to being part of a political party or cult. So you have hierarchies and you have these little like ladder climbing,
and you can work out who the most spiritual people are by you know, by how much they don't talk about certain things. Like some things I've been saying, like chasing after money. You know, that's not something you talk about. You know, challenging your organization to get some money back, or to be, you know, drinking alcohol, or you know, expressing so-called, you know. So just a little bit more on that bit about you know, non-duality, running away from it as fast as you can. The reason I say that is because it's been my experience so far is that the sun does shine brighter outside of these man-made temples to the structures that are created of ultimate truth, and that's what the temples pretty much represent, is ultimate truth. And people come and bow down before the temples of ultimate truth, and everybody's bowing down, and anybody that doesn't bow down to it are viewed with some disdain. But outside of these temples, the sun shines wonderfully, and there is a sense of strength and confidence in knowing that you don't actually need to go to a temple. You don't actually need to have a leader, a god, a guru, or anything like that. You can function quite well as an autonomous human being, living life, enjoying life, and just learning the lessons that come your way or don't come your way, and learning from whatever, that nothing untoward's going to happen, and even if it does, that's okay too. So to be completely free and to be living your life and not beholden to anybody, to not have to second guess yourself about what you're doing as to whether or not it's an appropriate way to live. If you're in the non-dual world, am I supposed to be doing this? Am I supposed to be thinking this? Am I supposed to be doing, going to these places, engaging in this behavior? All that sort of stuff is still basically viewing things as though there's something there to be controlled or done or whatever. So non-duality reinforces the notion that duality exists, and that there's a place called non-duality. There isn't. Duality doesn't exist, so why would there be a non-duality? That's it's nonsensical. Yeah. So I actually I actually find it's, I don't know how it can be communicated, but the more you throw this stuff out, the better it is for you with regards to the freedom that's inherent with just being natural, just living your life, to be completely and open, completely and totally free. Like in the Garden of Eden, to use Christian sort of stuff, where it talks about, people existed before the knowledge of good and evil, and that there's that place that, before the notions of right and wrong, good and bad, truth and untruth, there's a field. Come and be there. That truth is also just a concept. It's just something that gets put out there as though it's something important, something to be found, but somehow all the desires and all the seeking, all the energy that seeks after that stuff just goes, just vanishes. It doesn't, and it's okay for it to go. Doesn't have to continue being there. But something niggles away inside us sometimes, thinking, I can't let this go. Then this is eternal stuff. This is about big stuff, but it's not. That's the illusion. It's not about any of that. It's and the individuals who are feeling anxious with regards to non-duality and almost like the so-called woke crowd with the wokest stuff, where they start correcting people on the words that come out of their mouths. They're fearful, anxious people who haven't actually, they're talking about the flavor of ice cream, but don't actually know what ice cream tastes like. They'll talk about strawberry ice cream, but they don't actually have never tasted a mouthful of strawberry ice cream in their lives. Even though they can describe it, they have never actually put a spoon in their mouth. They can talk about its texture, its color, how fast it melts, what it sits like on a spoon, what sort of container it comes in, what it's made of, whether it's pure milk, full cream milk, thin milk, but they haven't actually put it in their mouths to actually have the actual taste of it and to have that whole thing. So because they bow down and talk about the ice cream container, but they actually put the spoon in their mouth. That's why I would say run the hell away from it. And just live life.
Live life. That's all there is to do, isn't it? Just live.
Yeah, well, you can't do anything else. That's the thing. And even the thing like, me even saying, run the hell away from it, as though there's something there that can run the hell away from anything. There's nobody actually doing anything. The non-duality is something that's happening. I've had, through my sort of existences, many sort of things that I can somehow get called upon in my memory to explain something to myself about something that's going on. There's this interesting tale in the Old Testament that when it's very interesting. This it talks about when a man is jealous of his wife and he suspects her of sleeping with someone. It's never the other way around, by the way. It's always from the man side of stuff. But anyway, the lesson is that the man would take her to see the priest at the temple, and the priest would get a glass made out of mud, and he'd pour something into it that would test the woman, and it'd make her drink it. So if she was unfaithful, it would kill her. But if she wasn't unfaithful, she'll just drink it like it was wine and water. It wouldn't impact her, right? So then it would go on from that to say that God has made the nations to drink of this cup, and the nations have drunk of it, and they've gone mad because they are all completely unfaithful. So that sort of stuff I talk about. The lesson that I kind of get out of this is that the whole thing with non-duality and religion and duality is like a big chalice full of liquid that people have to drink to see whether or not they can survive the drinking of it, to come out the other side of it and be free of it. If they can't be free of it, then they'll be imprisoned by it and held by it. And sort of the whole thing of non-duality and duality and religion is all like that. It's a big filtration system which catches all the little muddy bits, and other people just pass straight on through it. Now, this is all a really good narrative that I'm telling. Like, it's a nice little parable, if you like, but it's something that arose for me to give some sort of meaning to what I see going on, for want of applying meaning to things. And that non-duality is serving its purpose. It's ensnaring people who need to be ensnared, because they're going to be ensnared until they come to the understanding that it's all bullshit.
Yeah.
And it's only when they see that it's bullshit that they can walk free of it. Now, how do you communicate that? You don't.
I like saying, and I like what John Troyes tends to say, just go backstage and see what happens backstage, and spend a few times with the person who does all the talks and who's all smiles, who knows everything, who's enlightened, and go backstage and check them out. Spend a week with them and see how they are. Spend 5 minutes with them even after them, and see.
Oh, absolutely.
Really, you know.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah.
So life is as it is, and as again, this Stoic said also, like, we are not zombie-like,
No.
feeling emotions will keep arising. Maybe in some ways it could be more contained. I don't know, it could be like we might not damage the body as much with these feelings and emotions. Believe me, it's happening to me, something, congested here, but they will still keep arising. And as I was saying to someone the other day, I said, I didn't spill so many tears in my life, as much as I spilled afterwards. It's just I did not know where they were coming from. Whether it was compassion, sadness, love, everything combined. I couldn't stop it,
Yeah.
That, that's how it is. What can I do? And that's life. Yeah.
Absolutely. I find myself having some stronger reactions at the moment to movies on TV or TV series. I find myself, I'll be blubbering at a scene where my eyes will be watering. I'm sort of wiping the tears out of my eyes because I'm watching this thing. But that's nothing that used to happen to me previously. But it's just like, it's a response. There's a response going on to the stimulus of the story that's being told, and it's enhancing the whole experience of the narrative. That sort of stuff going on, because there's nothing there that can filter that or control that anymore. Or I'll be listening to an audio book and I'll be laughing at the story being told, because there's an identity going on there. So I'm actually enjoying the experience of the audio books and watching TV series or movies or listening to songs. Like Muse have just put out a really good album recently called Will of the People.
Okay.
And powerful, very powerful. And it's talking about compliance and do what you're told and all that sort of stuff. And it's like a prophetic snapshot of how people think things are in the world at the moment. So it's good just to be listening to that sort of stuff and
Mm.
having a response arise to that as you get in communication with people about it, because that's what people are exposed to. Is they're exposed to what they're seeing on the news and on the TV and on the movies they watch and the books they listen to or the books they read and the songs they listen to.
Mm.
And, you know, we're in that as well with them.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And we have our response to it. That's coming from a place where we're maybe not as conditioned as they are, and not as mesmerized by it as what some other people may be.
Yeah.
You know.
Same.
But
like,
but definitely get outside the temple.
Mm.
Leave the temples of truth.
Leave the temple and live life. You know, it's short to be wasted. Apparently short, to be wasted on, you know, previously maybe on too much thinking, because again, persons tend to live in their thoughts often, you know, just thinking, just missing out on what is in each moment, I presume. And
it's amazing how somehow that stops. So you don't somehow something changes where that's seen through. It's not something you can create. It's just somehow it just happens.
Somehow happens.
Yeah.
And I don't know how.
Yeah. I got no idea.
And,
I know, but now it's a big industry. The whole non-duality thing. There's a lot of money in that field now.
Yes.
Big money.
Millions and millions of dollars invested.
Yeah.
They actually have it as business. They have businessmen, they have employees that they pay, and it's a big business.
And they got a whole presentation that they put on.
And that gives belief to people. There's something special about it, I think.
Mystical. Yeah.
If you give it for free, people don't appreciate what's for free. Sometimes I think. You know.
Well, that's right.
Yeah. But anyways, it is as it is, and so just to bring this to the end, and I'm really grateful that I could have a chat to you. I always enjoy you talking.